Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, Reverend Dr. D. Thank you so much for joining us. Our very special guest today, he is a licensed clinical social worker. He's a therapist. I'm so glad he's a therapist. And he has been practicing social work for 18 years. And he has written a book, a fascinating book that I think we're all going to enjoy because it's going to open our eyes to some very interesting things. As a matter of fact, I think we could even tie one of the commandments to it. Thou shalt have no false gods, as it were, or idols, if you will. Well, his book is sort of along those lines. That title is False Gods. And the subtitle is how diversion is destroying democracy. And I would say, Kurt Warner, welcome to the program. I think it's destroying a whole lot more than just democracy. I think it goes deeper than that. How are you? Welcome.
I'm okay. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
I think that I should enlighten our listeners by saying that we have had an unofficial therapy session. And I don't know. Everybody reacts to the stimuli that comes in different ways and at different times. And for some reason, mornings seem to be my time. It's weird. It's like, I wish I didn't. I wish it didn't go that way. I would love to just wake up, close my eyes, wake up, sit up maybe. I am grateful for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you for the breath in my lungs, for the hearing. I can hear the birds and the crickets and da-da-da-da-da. No, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes I wake up and I'm in a cold sweat and my mind, the monkey mind, is chattering away, and I want to send the monkeys to the monkey bars and just leave me alone. And that's kind of what happened earlier in this day as we have this conversation. And I, again, thank you for the things that you offered. And actually, I think you did more by just listening and allowing me to, I guess you would say, vent. That's important, though, isn't it? And we'll get into the false idols here in a moment. But that's an important piece of the puzzle, is it not? That we need to find a way to release that energy, release that chatter in the head and so forth, right?
Absolutely. The concept behind it is if we don't, it becomes repressed and ignored, and it causes other neuroses and issues in our existence. So yes, it's that vent is most certainly important.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Well, what's interesting is, and of course, I went through Catholicism. I worked for a Christian station where they would recite the commandments somewhat regular, and obviously that one commandment I paraphrased about not having, false gods and having idols and so on and so forth. And yet, even those who are believers in those 10 commandments
Mhm.
have idols and they don't even realize it. And we're not picking on anybody here, folks. And this is not, but it's to make the point that we have all kinds of idols. And I'll tell you what, we're going to start with the one that I mentioned earlier. And you have a chapter in your book about this, which, by
Mhm.
the way, is not that long. It's a short read. But one of those idols, and boy, it grew fast. I mean, it exploded like from the early 1990s to the present.
Mhm.
And that's the internet. Not just social media, but the internet as
Mhm.
we know it today. I'm sorry, folks, www dot theinternet.com.
Mhm.
Um, how do you address that when you are talking with people, whether it's one on one or what have you in therapy sessions? Or I'm sure that you give talks. People will ask you to come and speak to their group or what have you. Um, how do you approach that subject knowing that everybody in the room has their phone? Maybe they're even recording you if you allow that. Or they've got it on vibrate, and if a phone call comes in, they might answer it, or they'll turn it off rather than put it on silent or do not disturb. I
Mhm.
mean, we are so connected. It's ridiculous.
We are. It's what we're connected to that is in question here, as far as from a value standpoint. How do I approach that with people in the room? I usually directly, which is tends to be my style in that way. So in terms of, we all know that information and all that power is at our hands. It's what we're using it for. It can be used, I would argue, for great good. When I'm writing, I use the internet a great deal for sources and for collecting information and so on and so forth. It could be used for either or, the cultivation of positive idols, I guess you could say, or false idols. And I think all too often, popularly, it is becoming more used for false idols that lead us away from what we want, what are our values in total, ourselves, I should say, our identities.
And
So,
with the invention, if you will, or the injection of AI, we're now
mhm.
reaching a point where we don't even know that what we're accessing is real or not, is true or not. Um, my wife and I, in the last 3 months, we have nearly been scammed out of, I'm going to say, what was it? 34,000, almost $35,000 from 3 different scams.
Mhm.
And so now I'm in a position where I can't trust the internet for anything. If I can't find a place to live, if I can't do this or that or the other, if I can't do the kind of research that I want to do using the internet, it's not that I've got nothing. I now have to find another source. I may have to go to the library. Oh my God, the library.
Well, absolutely, and that's I think taking it in context, because in other words, it sounds like the pendulum is swinging for you the other way. You want to go away from the internet altogether, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I wonder if, from an Aristotle standpoint, there's a golden mean there that could be used to use it just right, in the Goldilocks sort of way. Not
Yeah.
too much, not too little. Yeah.
Not too much, not too little, just right, just enough.
Right. One of the statistics I put forth in the book, the right you talked about. So ARPANET in the 1960s was the forerunner to the internet, and then you got email with Ray Tomlinson in 1971, and then it was with the invention of spam in 1994 that the internet started to change into a very commercialistic entity that became very idol oriented, false idol oriented, I should say.
Yeah.
And the rise of social media was a big piece of that, and in 2000s, 2010, so on and so forth. 86% of this current generation wants to be an influencer. That, I think, would be the definition of a false idol, because it's vanity personified. It's that notion, I would argue, when that's what it's being used for solely, I think that could be problematic from a value standpoint for the whole.
Well, it's a dilemma that we do have to talk about when it comes to the internet. But what we're going to do is we're going to move on to some of the other false idols as we continue talking with Kurt Warner. His book is entitled again "False Idols," available at his website. And I'm going to give that to you as soon as I scroll. Here we go. It is kurtwarnerbooks.com. Kurt Warner Books will be linked to kurtwarnerbooks.com so that you can access the book. You can get in touch with him. He's on Facebook and X or Twitter. I'm sorry, Elon, but it's always going to be Twitter to me. It's at Kurt Warner Books. That's the those are the two handles there. So please get your copy as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I am Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan. We're here talking with Kurt Warner. As it's interesting too because we turn people into idols, and I have to tell you also that when I am speaking on this program, or even to other people in general, when I give an observation or an opinion, I make it very clear that is mine. Okay? You want to adopt it, that's entirely up to you. But if you use it, it's yours. Don't tell them, oh, hey, Reverend Dr. D said, okay, because it's mine. I'm not putting it on anybody. And God forbid anybody should be following me. And by the way, going back to the internet, I don't follow anybody. I don't like anybody. And it's not because I don't like people, and it's not because, I don't want to follow. It's a waste of time. I don't have time to go back and, oh, who was I following, and have they said anything new today? You know, Forgive me for sounding maybe rude. I don't care. I don't care what you're thinking or feeling or what have you from the context of the social media platforms and the follows and the likes. You want to talk like Kurt? Yeah, I want to know how you're doing, Kurt. Are you feeling good today? Is life treating you well? And you were so kind to allow me to express myself earlier. And we sat and chatted for a little while, and it was beautiful. And that I care about. I care about your caring, your compassion, your therapeutic acumen, if you will, towards me in that time and towards others. But when it comes to that internet aspect, no, I don't have the time, and I would hope other people would begin to realize that because it takes us away from something that I think is so important, and that is that one-on-one communication, the community. I mean, the real community, not this fake thing that we have. Um, that's real important, isn't it? I mean, really, it is for all of us.
It is, and I'm an existential therapist. One of the existentialists, Sartre, Camus, the concept of values was very important, and it sounds like Dr. Dugan, your values are are different than what is society's. In other words, what's valued oftentimes by a lot of people in society, and that's essentially in a microcosm what I'm advocating for in the book on a macro level, that we all revalue. I call for a revaluation of those values and to determine what's really important for each person, which is going to be different. But I think there are certain constants there, like the good of the community, the good of the whole. I think would be everybody's on some level. Yeah.
Yeah. There was an interesting paradox that took place about 5.5, was it 5.5 years ago? Yeah, I think so. March of 2020. Paradox, as I saw it then, still see it today. And again, I'm not passing judgment on anybody who takes a position left, right, center. Not only in our founding documents, but elsewhere, it is stated in the preamble, if not the declaration, that these documents were created to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, promote the general welfare. That's the first one. Promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. All right? So promoting the general welfare means you give a damn about the community that you live in, the people you associate and come in contact with. And then to preserve the blessings to our posterity means what? To do the same thing to our offspring, our children. All right. So even in the Declaration, the founding fathers knew that our children were our future. And then there were those during that early period who started to bark about how their First Amendment rights were being usurped. And of course, I responded by saying, well, I have the same First Amendment rights, but I don't feel like they're being usurped. I'm actually exercising them by doing three things: masking up, washing up, and stepping back. And so I am using them. No one took them from me. I'm exercising them. But the question that I ask, and this to me is important regarding this aspect of false idols, because there's a part of me that feels there's an idol in there somewhere. And the question is, how do you juxtapose or balance your individual rights with those of the community?
I think that's a great question, and I think in terms of I I think that we do that through notions like the Bill of Rights, the concept that there are certain rights that are given to us that we have for ourselves, and then the rest of them we owe with the community. We agree upon with the community through the democracy, and it's that balance and the synergy between the two that I think we have to keep in constant, be constantly aware of in order to move forward as a republic. And I'm finding that the shift in that is becoming more about individual and the false idols that are pulling us away with our individual and less about the whole. And that's what Juvenal found 2,000 years ago in the same way. And that's the pacification of us through these false idols are the thing that I feel like is pulling us away from that community aspect more and more. And I'm arguing for that reevaluation in order to come back to them so that we can serve one, help one another as well as ourselves.
And it's not giving up one's individuality. It isn't. No
No,
one's asking
no,
them to anyone to give up their individuality.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people feel it's a threat to
Yeah.
give up the individuality. But it's not as Kierkegaard would put it in. It's not an either or. He has a famous book called Either Or, and it's not either or.
It's
You
both
can
and.
have both.
Yeah,
Yes,
both
yep, both
and.
and. Both and.
Yeah, I know. I've even brought that up in interviews where I will put out those what I phrase as diametrically opposed concepts, and they say
Mhm.
no, it's both and. It can be both
Mhm.
and I go, well, okay, you're right. You're right. It can be. And I'm also very much in favor, for myself specifically. I had this happen in an interview, Kurt, where we were chatting away, and I presented my perspective on whatever it was we're talking about, and he says, "Well, yeah, but have you ever thought of this?" And he shared his, and I pondered that for a few seconds, and I said, "Well, there goes another one of my straw huts up in flame, and I'm willing to burn them all to the ground and start over if that's what it takes
Mhm.
to have a better understanding not only of self, which to me is the core, but also of others. Because if I
Mhm.
understand myself, then I do understand other people and maybe what they're going through."
Exactly. Yes, and Socrates advocated for that in 400 BC. That's the same. Know thyself, right?
Yeah.
The Oracle of Delphi. Yeah. Um, but it's fading that notion, and what I'm seeing is more of what Emerson said, which is imitation being suicide. People imitating instead of being their own selves, and the devolution of the self because of it. If you're trying to be like a celebrity and you sort of worship at the altar of a celebrity, you lose yourself. If you worship at the altar of money, you lose
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet, you and I would agree that each of us has our own, let's say, celebrities, our own favorite actors and actresses,
Mhm.
our own favorite musicians and artists, and so forth, and our favorite authors, different
Mhm.
books. Mine, one of them is, of course, Paramahansa Yogananda. The other one is Og Mandino.
Mhm.
Uh, and Og Mandino is responsible for me meeting my very first wife. Now, he wasn't directly responsible personally, but through his book, Greatest Miracle in the World, most people know of Greatest Salesman, um, I wanted to record it because it was given to me by my best friend. And He worked in a bookstore, and I was going through a low period around Thanksgiving in '82, and he gave the book to me, and I read it cover to cover. And I was working for a radio reading service for the blind, and I wanted to record it, and they let me do it, and it aired. And this young lady, she heard it, and I delivered the cassettes to her, and the next thing we knew, 6 months later, we were getting married. Didn't last more than 15 years, but hey, there you go. I mean, I learned a lot from that experience that I have brought into my present relationship.
Sure.
But it's not like I have a shrine in my home to Og or to John Denver or to Harry Chapin or Dan Fogelberg, or even, I will admit, even to Barry Manilow, who helped me through some very difficult high school days and nights, listening to his music and so forth. And yet I know there are people that, my goodness, they do. They have a shrine, they have an altar, they have maybe all the walls in their room are covered with posters and pictures. When does it shift from being a fan to, I can't think of any other word because of your book, to an idolater, one who is idolizing this person, maybe even stalking them?
And I think it's a great question, because there's nothing. I mean, we begin modeling our parents, admiring others is how we learn from others in the world as social beings. There's nothing wrong with that, with having a celebrity we like or something like that. But when it comes to idolatry, when I would argue, when behavior and thought patterns both become pervasively linked to that entity. In other words, when it starts disrupting or affecting one's existence in a way that takes them away from their authentic sense of self. I like this because he likes it. That's not a reason to like anything, right?
Yeah.
I like that type of notion. When you start betraying who you are in order to be like them. In the '90s, we saw Rachel from Friends. Everybody got the same haircut. Everybody started acting like Rachel. That's a version. Yes, Taylor Swift today. Same thing, these notions in terms of becoming the other person, wanting to be. 30% of people, not only from a celebrity standpoint, 90% have a parasocial relationship with the celebrity. 30% actually want to be them. Don't want to be themselves anymore. They want to be the celebrity. That's when it becomes very much a false cycle, I would argue.
I mean, I love singing the songs of John Denver. I have most all of his albums. I started collecting them when I was probably 12 or 13, when his first few albums came out, and I kept getting them and getting them and getting them. I will say my favorite album is I Want to Live, which has a pencil drawing of him on the cover, and of course that title song. I'm saddened by the way that he died, sure, but I read his book, and one of the things that really struck me about his book, and comparing that to his life, not that they were that different, of course, was here was a man who wrote and sang songs of such great depth and importance, and yet struggled in his own personal life. He had 3 wives throughout his lifetime. I think it was 3. And I think he had 2 kids, Zach and Jennifer. I believe, and he may have had a third with his third wife, Australian woman. In any event, the man lived a life of ups and downs before his passing. And I don't idolize him. I appreciate what he went through, and I can kind of look at that. Although there are times I sit there when someone would say, well, Richard, there are people that are worse off than you. You do know that, don't you? It's like, how is that supposed to help me? That kind of thing, doing the comparison. But in this case with John specifically, or for that matter with Harry or Dan Fogelberg, and even Barry Manilow, they all had their foibles, if you will. They all had their struggles or challenges. And at least I can look at them and say, look what they created. Look what they brought about. And then I take a look at what I've brought about. This podcast and all of the people I have met, the thousands who have contributed to my life, just as you have thousands who have contributed to yours. And you start taking stock, going back to that morning, waking up and being grateful for the thousands and those experiences, and realizing it ain't over till the last breath is exhausted.
Yeah, And I think one of the most important in terms uh, all of the constructive concepts in there. In other words, there was a lot of meaning. It sounds like that you made in doing what you did in the construction as you lived your life as all those people. How you made it sounds like a very meaningful existence, and I think that is authentic and it's real. You won't find that emulating someone. You're doing it yourself, and you're finding a way. You talked about many ways in which you did that, and I think that that's our task in general to start to look to make our own rather than to follow the herd or the crowd.
One of his songs, the chorus line goes along the lines of looking for space, trying to find out who I am. And that's part of what this program is. Yes, for me to try to find out who I am, but also to encourage the listeners and viewers to try to find out who they are. What's the phrase? Know thyself. Uh, Something along the lines of know thyself to be true or what have you. I like the biblical phrase, ye shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. Well, if we know about the good, the bad, and the ugly, or the light and the dark side of who we are, we don't start blaming. We may take responsibility, but we are able to say, look where I am today, either in spite of or because of those dark spaces, those shadow spaces. It's just fascinating. We're talking with Kurt Warner. Why does that name sound so familiar to me? I mean, this is the first time you and I have met, and I'm trying to remember who the other Kurt Warner is. And it may lead us into another area on this program as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Kurt Warner is our guest here on the program. Kurt, who you obviously have been addressed. It has been brought to your attention. Are you the Kurt Warner that? Who am I thinking of?
Several million times that has been expressed to me. Kurt Warner, the Rams quarterback, or the Giants, or the Cardinals. Yeah, that's the one who took over when I was growing up in the '80s. There was a Kurt Warner from Penn State. I'm from Pennsylvania, so he was the he was a running back, and he went to play for Seattle. And so my whole life I was a football player, always called a football player.
Wow.
Yes.
Did you ever consider changing your name, or were you proud to carry it for the football player?
Kurt Warner is one of those celebrities who's such a humanitarian and has value. He focuses on giving back so much. I actually always enjoyed I had no problem with the fact that I don't feel like it's a suicide of self in any way, because we're very different entities
Yeah.
in all ways. Yeah,
Very cool. Very cool. You ever thought about going Curtis Warner, or is that not the game that your parents gave, the name the folks gave you?
No, that's not the name, but I certainly have been called Curtis quite a few times.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's
Well, we'll stay away from that. There are some other idol aspects, if you will, from Kurt's book called False Idols, and we're going to talk about a few of those. And one in particular that is extremely important, I think. Now, I'm a big baseball fan, and I keep popping up, videos keep popping up on Facebook, and primarily of the ninth inning of the 2001 World Series between the Arizona Diamondbacks and the New York Yankees. And I will sit and I will watch it, because I know as soon as we called him Gonzo, gets up to bat, I know that is going to be the winning hit. It'll bloop single into left center field, and we win the game and the World Series. And I love watching baseball. I don't know stats. I don't care about the stats. I love the game. Terry Cashman is a musician. And back in the mid 80s, I worked for the local news talk station, KTAR, number one station in Phoenix. I worked, what was it? I think it was Friday and Saturday nights. And I got to play or produce, if you will, the Phoenix version with the commercials of the Larry King Show from Mutual Broadcasting. And he had Terry Cashman on the program, who wrote a series of songs called Talkin' Baseball. And at that time, there were only 28 teams. So in each one of the songs, he would feature two or three or four of the teams. Arizona wasn't among them, of course. But I loved the music, and one of his songs is called Baseball in Ballet. And that's one of the reasons I love watching it. But I never focused on, I mean, when Reggie Jackson was playing Mr. October, oh my God,
Mhm.
whether he was on the side I wanted to win or otherwise, it was such a joy to watch these men playing this game. Sometimes they forget that. But I never focused on one player. And I guess that's one of the things too. We go back to what you said earlier that some people they want to be that person. And there's a programmer on the station that uses this phrase at the end of their program. They say, "Don't try to be someone else because they're all taken. Be yourself." I love that phrase. That's a great phrase.
It is a great phrase. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Go ahead, please? You want to share?
well, in terms of sports, is the original. Let me preface it with I love sports. I was been a sports fan my whole life, but sports is the original circuses of bread and circuses. This is the Colosseum in the modern time, and the notion. This is what when Juvenal, Rome would put on games, the Colosseum, in order to distract the people, pacify them, and get them interested in that, and not anything else. Sports is that same concept today, and there's nothing wrong with sports. It's a wonderful thing, but when the average sports fan spends 302 hours watching sports per year, and if you quantify, 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for leisure, 8 hours by 302, it's quite a bit of their time. It comes out to something like 36 days or something like that in terms of the leisure time. The notion that I'm saying is the opportunity cost of all that time is what that could be done in terms of other realms. That's where it becomes an idol, because people do memorize statistics. You said you don't particular fixate on one player, but so many people do, and it becomes that obsession. There was a movie back in the day called The Fan with Robert De Niro, where he gets obsessed with Wesley Snipes' character, who's a player in that way, and it's that notion that it's a different type of parasocial relation, but it's the same concept as celebrity. But it's in small doses, it's very good, just like celebrity. In big doses, I think it detracts from who we are, and it takes us down a road of false idols, and
Yeah.
that's the notion. Yeah.
False Idols is the title of the book, ladies and gentlemen. It's available at kurtwarnerbooks.com, kurtwarnerbooks.com. And this is Tell Me Your Story. The aspect of false idols, the title of Kurt Warner's book, is fascinating. And there are two categories that become, I would say, almost dangerous. If I'm correct here, if that's my correct observation, and they are both, we'll call them religious. I prefer philosophical, but religious idols
Mhm.
and political idols. Because right now in America, and actually, if we go back to the 80s, early 90s, during the height of televangelism, we had that issue. We had that problem. Religious
Mhm.
ideology, idolizing. And today we have the same thing. And it's not exclusively to one person. We could sit here and talk about the one person, but it's not just them. And I sit here asking myself in the political realm, are you, when you go to vote, are you voting for the person, the personality that you see and hear, or are you voting for the things that they are telling you they're going to do? And the reason I mention that is because in the 2001 election, the campaign, I was watching Al Gore give a speech on TV, and he says, "Here are the things that we are going to do," and he da 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 da. And then he says, and I'm going, "Yeah, let's do this." And then he says, "And now here's what I'm going to do." I turned it off. I turned it off because if he is not with we the people and doing it on behalf of we the people, you might have, hey, because we have someone now who says, "I do it. I am going to do it. I will do it. It will be me, 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 me." Or I, and there's no I in team. And the team is we the people. But again, in the religious realms, it's the same thing. People will just, they'll give everything. They'll give all their money, their time, etc., etc. How are these two elements, and it seems to me there is a connection between them and also with your comments about the destruction of democracy. Talk to us about that.
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, the elements between the whether it's politicians or religious and the notion of I, the notion of I versus the whole.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the crux of the entire. In other words, a lot of when any discourse strays from the we to the I, I'm not sure it's fit to be in the sphere, and then it ceases to be a communal effort, and it becomes an idol of sorts. The person then is out for vanity in that realm. And what I found in, I would argue, both spheres, but in particular politics, is that distraction is becoming the norm. And in other words, instead of focusing on the we or the I, it's look over here. Here's another. We just saw Trump send troops into Washington D.C. right in the middle of the Epstein issue. So it's don't focus on that. The Epstein story had just broken. He put the focus on there. In the 90s, Clinton, when Lewinsky was happening, he started bombing Iraq, which is called diversionary foreign policy. And this is becoming, it's I until I don't want you to focus on me because something's happening, and then I'm going to distract over here. And that's what I see happening a lot in that realm, and it's effective. And that's the problem. When a politician starts a war, or in order to make us look another place to divert attention, we no longer feel like we can question them because it would be it's widely seen as unpatriotic to do so. So we feel muted. We have to just okay, go along, and that's where I think it has a great deal of destruction in terms of the democracy. And I hope did I answer your question in terms of that with the I?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. I want to jump into another area. We're going to probably rattle a few chains. That's not our intention, but it is important that we take a look at this aspect of false idols, how diversion, as you just talked about, is destroying democracy. And we're going to do that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story. Kurt Warner's my guest. And where does your chapter on the economy come into this mix, the economic culture? How does that spin in?
Well, so one of the notions I explore a lot in the book is this concept of hegemony, which is the the classes with the power, the groups with the power, displacing their values upon the people, the rest of the society, because they have that power. I find in terms of the economic sphere, our economic system, the way it works and the way it functions, I would argue, often serves as one big distraction. In other words, for instance, one of the common thought processes and notions that's propagated from an economic standpoint is that wealth is worth, and that we have, in order to matter, in order to be important, or to have some kind of, we have to accrue a certain amount of money, have a certain amount in our bank account. Therefore, we spend and divest much of ourselves and our life invested in this machine that we're constantly working in and trying to get ahead in order to achieve that notion that we're worth something. And I find that to be something that's very, very deleterious to our sense of self and who we are. And many of the values of the system, greed, competition, exploitation. These are the three-headed monster that I put forth that sort of serves as false idols that the economic system is imbued with, and that we spend much of our time chasing. And the opportunity cost of that, like with sports, like with celebrity, like with politicians, is that we're not paying attention to what might matter to ourselves, because we're not discovering that. We're not knowing thyself. We're involved in chasing these ghosts in one way or another of what we should be. Yeah.
Is our obsession with celebrities, sports, consumer culture, and the social media quietly dismantling democracy? Well, our guest, Kurt Warner, psychotherapist and award-winning author, thinks so, and he's sounding the alarm in his new book, False Idols: How Diversion is Destroying Democracy. It's fascinating, Kurt, when I start, and I I actively stay away from the news, especially on television. The irony is that I've been working for news talk and information stations most of my life, but it seems as though the trend has been growing for the last 45 years or 46 years that I've been in the business, to the point where now people do not even trust the shall we say the three major networks or any other news gathering sources. There are some who do trust those that echo their particular philosophy, their values, morals, ethics, and so forth. And I have to, I want to say that what is really disheartening is that when you are then trying to accomplish something in your life and you come across someone who does not want to do the right thing. All right. There's what's called the letter of the law, hammer down. And then there's the spirit of the law. I don't know if you ever saw this guy on the internet or anywhere. He was a judge who just passed away. And he was kind of referred to as the kind judge, because people would come to him and they would share their stories. Hopefully they were being honest with him. And he would show compassion. Sometimes he'd dismiss the case because it was a parking ticket they couldn't afford to pay, and it was only $50, and those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And he was doing the right thing. He was exercising the spirit of the law. You get another judge in there that puts the hammer down and says, no, if you don't pay it, you're going to jail, which means they are now just separated from the families. They're going to lose their job, which means when they come out, they're going to have no employment. They may lose their dwelling where they're living, and the list. In other words, it's a slippery slope downhill. Because the individuals who are not doing the right thing, they're doing the letter of the law, are unwilling to recognize the humanity of the other person and the connectedness that they share.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes. And it's very evident. It's as you were explaining that, I couldn't help but think. I worked in chemical dependency for a long time, and I watched drug courts and judges deal with people a lot in that way. And the people who did it by the letter of the law, the judges who were very, okay, the law says, there was a very different outcome usually than the people who were more like, you reminded me when you were talking about the other type, actually a Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, who was a very kind, a very different type of emperor who had a different way of looking at going about things. When there was an understanding and a recognizing people as human, that the outcomes I can say almost universally from both a therapeutic and a social work standpoint in general are better. They're more humanistic. They're more kind and well, compassion goes a long way, and I think oftentimes that's not recognized in the first type you described, which is maybe too many of the people. Yeah.
I'm gonna mention this. We'll know who I'm talking about. I'm not gonna mention their name just because I just won't. But on June 15th, 2015, this individual came down the escalator and started speaking. Now, what I heard was the words from the bullies that I grew up with in school. I heard no policy. I heard no positions. I heard a bully. And I said, no, I do not want a bully in that position. I would talk to people during that particular campaign and I would ask them, okay, you know this guy. You know his personality. We've heard him talk. We've heard him do this, that, the other thing. If this were an employee, and this was business people that I would talk with, if this were one of your employees, how long would you allow them to stay? So, oh, God, no, we'd probably fire them right on the spot. Then why would you hire them to run a country? Explain that to me. Now, go ahead, please.
Well, and that, I love the way you put that, because explain that to me. In other words, most supervisors in the situation that you're describing would critically think through that enough to suggest that this is not a fit person to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I feel. That's what I'm posing in the book is something that's lacking in terms of we're not utilizing critical thinking when it comes to that, and that's where I think would change certainly a lot of things. But I didn't mean to interrupt you when you were saying. Yeah,
No,
go
no,
ahead.
no. Interruption is always welcome. It's always
Okay.
welcome. It's just fascinating to me. Well, oh no, all I care, I like the guy's policies.
Mhm.
Well, wait a minute. So Martin Luther King was lying or misinforming us when he said that we should judge a person by not by the color of their skin, red, white, black, blue, orange, but by the content of their character. But you're telling me character doesn't matter. And it's like there's a biblical phrase that is being exemplified here, and he's not the only one doing it. Okay, he's not the only one. So I'm not
Mhm.
picking on one person here. A house divided against itself will not stand. And that's what's happened in America. This house has been divided, but not just in half. I mean, it's been slivered. And that's the sad fact. So, what is you present all of these characteristics, these different aspects. But my question to you would be, how do we stop this, or how do we turn this around so that this country's uh, legacy does not end at 250 or 49 or 50 or 60 years, because that's what a lot of people are saying, that maybe that some people think we've reached the tipping point, the point of no return, and we can't recover. And I'm sitting here going, come on. Human beings are probably one of the most resilient creatures on the planet.
Mhm.
We can find a way around. And that's one of the slogans we have. We're looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. Just look around you. Go ahead.
No, it's a great question, and I think that if those false idols were recognized and obliterated, if we stop focusing on the things that were pulling us away from fixing that, I would argue step one. B, then, if we started to reevaluate, examine our values, and critically think about what is the best thing. I think that there are more commonalities than there are differences. We all are brothers and sisters. We all have the same, on one level or another. We have not the same, but similar desires, drives, values, beliefs. I think that we can find enough commonality to start to form something much better and avoid the fate of Rome, which is what I describe in the book.
Mhm.
That essentially Rome fell for very specific reasons, and I make a lot of parallels between America and Rome because there's a very similar path that they're going down. The only difference is Rome was more like 1,000 years. We're 250 right now and teetering a little bit.
Mhm.
But the concept is to bring it back to those values, those commonalities, and eliminate the maladaptive thought processes, the things that are leading us to all that division. I'm not sure it has to be there in the way that it is. And you named someone in Martin Luther King who was able to do that very successfully at one point, in terms of bringing people together in that way. And I think that model could be utilized in a lot of ways today in a very positive way to overcome this and bring the
Right.
country together. Yeah.
Well, I hope so. I really do. I hope that we can find a way to turn this around. The thing that is so fascinating to me is that the idol becomes so large in the perception of the viewer or listener that they can't see the things they're being diverted from. And it's like, wait a minute, that there's that television program, remodeling a home, and then there's this, the family goes off on a vacation while their home is completely remodeled, all right, totally changed, and they come back in on this bus, and they get off, and the bus is in front, blocking the view of the house, and there's a phrase that is used, and it is move that bus, and the bus moves out of the way, and you see the faces of the people light up and go crazy and cry and oh my god, and da 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 da. And it's almost like that's what we want to ask to be done. Move that bus so we can see it all. We're grown-ups. We're big. We put on our big boy and big girl pants. We can handle it. Tell us the truth. Let us see it all. But the problem is that even though now we can see it all, some people say, I don't care. I don't care if the house is on fire and you want to go live in there. I don't care if it's on fire. I'm going to go in anyway. It's like that's almost insurmountable in one sense because they've already made up their minds.
Mm-hmm. They have, and that is where we stand today. But if that person does go into that house and it is burning, and they do burn it, where does that possibly lead? It doesn't. I mean, eventually the concept is how much has to burn before we take a step back, see the forest through the trees, which is, I would argue, what you're arguing, and then and reevaluate and change. And that is the major question here, because it could come all the way down to ruin, but it doesn't have to. It could start now. It could change this moment.
Yeah.
In the way. Yeah.
There's a wonderful quote that was given to me at the age of 21. I've held it ever since. It is better to begin in doubt and end in certainty than begin in certainty and end in doubt. And right now, we have people who are in certainty, absolutely certain that this is the way that we should go. And what's going to end up happening is, sadly, through their own choice, they are going to be disenchanted somewhere down the road here. Mm-hmm. And they're going to become uncertain, and they're not going to have anything to hold on to. Mm-hmm. And I try to stay there. I mean, whether it's talking about the various philosophies and their doctrine and dogma, there are so many things that are so I'm curious about, and I shared this with you off air about in one of these things that I was trying to understand why there's such an objection over the centuries, literally, to this concept of same-sex relationships. And there's a Jewish law of the 613. And a rabbi that I had on the program asked me if I knew the context in which it was written. Now, these were not the Ten Commandments written by God. These were Jewish laws written by the Jews, by the Israelis, if you will, the Jewish people. And it turns out that the reason was because they didn't want to interrupt the procreative process of man. Mm-hmm. There are 8.3 billion people on the planet. Do you honestly believe that people who are having same-sex relationships have interfered with anything? And so forth. I mean, we're still here. Again, resilient. Human beings are resilient. And to me, that's exciting. That is very exciting. So do you have hope?
I do have hope because of what you just said. Human beings are resilient. They can come back. We've come back from darker things. I mean, look at the Civil War. We've come back from so much using this country alone, between the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and all the other. I mean, we've had plenty of issues, but we've persevered. The Rome, when I was comparing them, East versus West, there was a schism. It wasn't North and South. It was East and West. We're North and South, and their schism became irreparable. Ours has not become that yet, and I don't think we're so far past. It seems like it a lot, and a lot of that certainty leads into it. I think infinite certainty is a very dangerous thing. Euripides, in ancient Greece, said, "Question everything." We have to. That concept of questioning eludes the notion of pure certainty. But I think no matter what, and as a therapist, I can say very confidently, there is almost always a way to reach anyone in some way. It's just a way of going about it and coming into. It's the route going in that not one size fits all. So I think if we could find that with each other and start to reason, but it's certainly easier said than done.
Yeah. Even on a political level, what you've just stated brings up a thought of mine that I have pondered quite often and wondered why no one has thought of this before. When a particular party does not win whatever the race is, all right, it's usually because the people don't like the message, all right? It isn't always the messenger. Usually it's the message. Mm-hmm. And so what that tells me is Change the message. Change the way you put it together so that it will elicit the reaction you want, i.e., the vote for your candidate or that
Mhm.
particular proposition and so forth. Um, and when a politician, and this is for me, when a politician attacks another politician, I won't vote for him.
Mhm.
If you can't speak to your strengths and leave the other and again, I know that's not the way the politics runs, the campaigns, but if you can't just present your case without attacking your opponent, well, then your case doesn't stand the test because you're attacking the other person, saying that they're inferior, their position is inferior, yours is superior. No, yours is just different. Yours is just different,
Mhm.
you know. And I think that's
It
true in pretty much every realm, isn't it?
it is, and but in the name of in the notion of using the notion of distraction, that I would say is the bane. It's the common point
Yeah.
of is to attack each other and not talk about the actual. It's sometimes it's very difficult to sift through the issues on a local level. It's almost impossible to
Yeah.
find them. Yeah, and I don't know how we're supposed to vote when we can't be given the information to go through, very succinctly, and it's all distraction. You remember John Kerry and the Swift voting had nothing to do with the actual man, the candidate, the ability to run the office, and we can name that on the right and the left.
Yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
constantly, constantly occurring and anemic. It's I would say a cancer in the political and in the
You
democracy.
know, we're not picking on anybody. We're not picking on a party specifically.
Yeah,
It's across the board,
no.
and and
Mhm.
and uh, and so you people have to make up their minds. There was one other phrase, I can't remember which founding father said it, but it had to do with an educated electorate.
I actually use them in the book. Franklin Roosevelt talked about. FDR talked about. If in order for democracy to succeed, there has to be an educated. They have to. Education is the key to make it work. And one of the stats that I cite in the book is between I think it was 2019 and 21. I forget the years exactly, but there were this exodus of 1 million or 2 million people. I think it was 1 million students from colleges in that time. We're losing education in terms of
Mhm.
that, and I would argue that it only exacerbates all kinds of issues in terms of the republic. Because I think FDR was very right in that statement that
But
I
at this,
cite. Yeah.
but at the same time, is and this is sort of a sidebar subject to talk about. Is college for everybody? I mean, me and my brother, we went to vocational schools. He went to DeVry. I went to Ron Bailey School or Rudy Miller School of Broadcasting in Phoenix. I went to 3 semesters of junior college and then the vocational school, and I've been doing this now since 1979. So,
Mhm.
and I consider myself pretty educated because these programs educate me. You educate me. So they left Harvard and Yale and UCSB and Arizona State University. Maybe what they were taking wasn't really what they wanted to do, or was there a survey taken as to why they left the educational institutions?
You make a great point. I no, I'm not sure. Nothing's for everybody. So there is no. I mean, a college obviously would not be for. But the notion that one can complete mandatory education, meaning grade school, high school, etc., middle school, and not come out with critical thinking skills. The one of the concepts that I bring up is that it's not there's no curriculum for critical thinking. I mean, we have civics, but yeah, but we don't teach the way to manipulate the information in a way to say, hey, if they're just attacking each other, that's like a smokescreen, not to actually talk about any kind of actual issue that would help us.
Hmm.
So that's the notion that I don't know where it would be taught. If colleges usually have a critical thinking in some, as an elective or something like that, but I'm saying before that,
Yeah.
in high school or something like that.
Yes.
It's amazing how absent it is in
Hmm.
terms of that in curriculums. And there, I think then when people got out, yeah, trade school, anything in terms of, but educating there in order to make civic decisions that would benefit the entire republic, all of us, the democracy.
That's a fascinating subject. There's no question about it. And of course, once you contaminate the educational system, then it's a downhill slide, if you will, to, in a manner of speaking, to get what we've got today. And we can't ignore that. We've got to find a way. And I'm hoping it's one of the reasons I got into broadcasting back in 1980. Why I went to the vocational school in the first place was because I wanted to raise the bar. And unfortunately, despite all of my efforts as a solo individual, um, at least on a larger scale, it hasn't helped. On a local scale, it has, but on a large scale, it's unfortunately not working out real well. The False Idols is the title of the book, and it is about the distractions that are, or the diversions, if you will, that are on its way to, in essence, as Kurt Warner says, on its way to destroying democracy. But it doesn't have to be that way. We're not blaming any one person because it's not one person's fault or responsibility. In a matter of fact, I hate to think of it this way, Kurt, but I'm as responsible as you and everybody else. You know, I mean, we're doing our part
Absolutely.
now, but we're all part of the we the people.
Absolutely.
And what have we done? What have you done? What have I done? And I'd like to think we have made a difference. KurtWarnerBooks.com is the website as we continue on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan with Kurt Warner. Kurt, I got to tell you, I knew this was going to be a really good program. We were going to have great conversation here, which is what these are. They're not interviews in that context, they're conversations. And we've touched upon some things I hope have at least garnered some thought on the part of the listener and the viewer. And again, encouraging people to go to your website to get a copy of your book, which is, of course, False Idols. And we hope that they will do that. Thank you so much for being a part of the work that we're doing here to try to change the world and find those new ways of living. And they're out there. We just have to be willing to think outside of the nine dots or outside the box, however you want to phrase it. I really appreciate you being here.
And I really, it's really truly an honor to be here, and I thank you so much for it, the opportunity, and I'm very grateful.
I have three final questions I want to ask you. I ask all of my guests, but before I do, I want to thank you for listening and watching. Tell me your story. New paradigms for a new world. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all 9 of those times at richarddugan.com. We have podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and we're on YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. Subscribe and click notification. Hope you will. Go to Amazon.com and get a copy of my book, Choices, 5 Steps for Life. It's available in hardcover, paperback, as well as Kindle, and Audible will be released shortly. And we also ask if you can. I don't play the piano. I did take piano lessons, but no piano, so I don't really have a tip jar anywhere like that, but we do have one called PayPal. And if you could leave us a tip, we would be gratefully appreciative. I want to thank you for those who have helped and to those who will help. And if you go to richarddugan.com, at the top of the page, there are 2 links. One to Amazon.com to get a copy of my book, and the other to PayPal to leave us a tip. We also ask that you take some time during this, the decade of perfect vision, to go within, to listen to that still small voice, which I think would help in these times of guiding you through a process of really getting around or through those diversions, if you will, and getting to the truth, getting to the heart and the core of what is really important. So we hope you'll do that. With all that being said, we thank you again, and we now ask our 3 final questions of our very special guest. The first of which is, who is Kurt Warner?
Oh, who is Kurt Warner? Me, not the football player, right?
You, not the football player.
In terms of a statement of identity, I am a psychotherapist and author and someone who is zealous about philosophy and bettering the lives of others.
What gets you up in the morning?
Uh, uh, Doing good, doing something to benefit other human beings and animals, anything. Yeah,
And
the earth.
finally, what was your best day?
Wow, that's a good one. As far I would say, if I had to say the best day, my mom passed away a number of years ago. I'd have to say any day that I got to spend fully with her. She was one of the greatest human beings I've ever known, and I just and so any day with her, just her and I, that would be the best day.
Once again, false idols, how diversion is destroying democracy. Kurt Warner, my guest. And again, I thank you folks for joining us here on the program. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love Talal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life and being in mine. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.